Lisa Martinez sat in her car outside the Iron Wolf Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy for 20 minutes before she found the courage to walk inside. The building looked scary from the outside with its dark windows and loud music coming from within. She could see shadows of people moving around through the glass doors. Her hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. At 34 years old, Lisa had never done anything like this before. She worked at a small accounting office where the most exciting thing that happened was when the coffee machine broke down. She spent 8 hours a day looking at numbers on a computer screen. Her life was quiet and safe, just the way she had always liked it. But things had changed 6 months ago when her husband left her. David had been her high school sweetheart, and they had been married for 12 years. One day he came home and said he was not happy anymore. He said he needed space and excitement in his life. 2 weeks later, he moved in with a younger woman from his gym. Lisa found herself alone in their small house with nothing but silence and empty rooms. Her friends tried to help by inviting her to dinner or movies, but she felt lost. She had spent so many years being David's wife that she forgot who she was without him. Every evening after work, she would sit on her couch and watch television until it was time to sleep. One night, while flipping through channels, she stopped on a documentary about martial arts. She watched a small woman defeat a much larger man, using something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The woman was not big or strong-looking, but she moved like water and made the man give up in seconds. Something about it made Lisa feel curious for the first time in months. She spent the next few days looking up jiu-jitsu schools online. Most of them looked too intense or expensive. Then she found Iron Wolf Academy. Their website said they welcomed beginners of all ages and backgrounds. They offered a free trial class for new students. Lisa stared at her phone for an hour before she finally called and signed up. Now she was here, sitting in the parking lot, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Through the windows, she could see people in white uniforms throwing each other around on blue mats. They all looked young and strong and serious. Most of them were men with muscles and confident faces. She felt like a fraud just thinking about walking in there. Lisa looked at herself in the car mirror. She was 5 feet and 2 inches tall and had never been athletic. In school, she was always picked last for sports teams. She wore glasses and had brown hair that she kept in a simple ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was, a quiet office worker who preferred books to sports, but something deep inside her refused to start the car and drive home. Maybe it was anger at David for leaving her. Maybe it was loneliness that made her desperate to try something new. Or maybe it was that image of the small woman from the documentary who proved that size did not always matter. Lisa took 3 deep breaths and got out of the car. She wore old sweatpants and a t-shirt because she did not know what else to bring. The gym had told her they would provide a uniform for the trial class. She walked slowly toward the front door, feeling like she was walking toward the edge of a cliff. The moment she opened the door, she was hit by a wall of sound and smell. Men were grunting and breathing heavily. The mats made slapping sounds as bodies hit them. The air was thick with sweat and something that smelled like cleaning products. Music played loudly from speakers in the ceiling. A man at the front desk looked up as she walked in. He was wearing a black uniform with a brown belt around his waist. His name tag said, Carlos Rodriguez. He looked to be in his 40s with graying hair and kind eyes. His face had small scars that suggested he had been doing this for many years. You must be Lisa, Carlos said with a warm smile. Welcome to Iron Wolf Academy. Ready for your first class? Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice. Carlos led her to a small office where he had her sign some papers and gave her a white uniform called a gi. It was much heavier than she expected and felt rough against her skin. Carlos explained that she would learn basic positions and movements in her first class. He promised to pair her with experienced students who would help her learn. As Carlos showed her around the gym, Lisa noticed the other students. Most were young men in their 20s and 30s. They moved with confidence and talked easily with each other about techniques and competitions. A few women trained there too, but they all looked strong and athletic. Lisa felt more out of place with each passing minute. The worst part was when she saw Jake Morrison for the first time. He was impossible to miss. Jake was 26 years, old and built like a professional athlete. His black belt was worn and faded, showing how long he had been training. He was in the middle of demonstrating a move to a group of newer students, and they hung on his every word like he was a celebrity. Jake noticed Lisa right away. His eyes looked her up and down, and she saw a small smirk cross his face. He whispered something to the student next to him, and they both laughed. Lisa felt her cheeks turn red with embarrassment. She had not even started training yet, and already someone was making fun of her. When class officially began, Carlos lined everyone up according to their belt rank. Lisa stood at the very end of the line with the other white belts, but even they seemed more prepared than she was. They knew how to tie their belts properly and stood with good posture. Lisa fumbled with her belt and tried to copy what everyone else was doing. The warm-up was harder than Lisa expected. They did jumping jacks, push-ups, and running around the mat. Lisa was breathing heavily after just a few minutes, while everyone else seemed barely affected. She could feel people watching her struggle, and she heard quiet laughter from somewhere behind her. But despite the embarrassment and physical difficulty, something inside Lisa felt alive for the first time since David left. Her heart was pounding, but it was from excitement as much as exhaustion. When Carlos showed her first technique, a simple way to escape when someone grabbed her wrist, she felt a spark of interest that she had not felt in years. As the class ended and she walked back to her car, Lisa was sore and tired and completely overwhelmed. She knew that Jake and some of the other students thought she did not belong there. She knew it would be easy to never come back and return to her safe, quiet life. But Lisa also knew that for the first time in months, she had done something that scared her. And somehow that felt like the beginning of something important. Lisa had been training at Iron Wolf Academy for 3 months, and every day felt like a battle. She came to class 4 times a week, never missing a session even when her body ached from the previous training. Her muscles were getting stronger, and she was learning the basic moves, but her progress felt painfully slow compared to everyone else. The other students had stopped pretending to be nice. At first, some of them tried to help her or at least ignored her struggles. But as weeks passed and Lisa continued to make mistakes that seemed obvious to them, their patience ran out. Now she could feel their eyes rolling when Carlos paired them with her for practice. Jake Morrison had become her biggest problem. Every time Lisa stepped onto the mat, Jake found a way to make her feel small. When she took too long to understand a technique, he would sigh loudly and make comments about how some people learned faster than others. When she made a mistake during sparring, he would stop the entire class to point out what she did wrong. "Look, everyone," Jake said one Tuesday evening after Lisa had tried unsuccessfully to escape from a basic hold. "This is exactly what not to do. See how she's using her arms instead of her hips? This is why technique matters more than just trying hard." The whole class turned to stare at Lisa, who felt her face burning with shame. Tony Garcia, a brown belt who had been training for 6 years, usually joined in with Jake's comments. Tony was 28 and worked as a personal trainer, so he thought he knew everything about fitness and technique. He would shake his head whenever Lisa struggled with a move and make comments about how martial arts were not for everyone. "Maybe you should try yoga instead," Tony suggested one day after Lisa had difficulty with a rolling exercise. "It's more gentle, you know, better for people who aren't really athletes." Several students laughed, and Lisa pretended she had not heard him. Kevin Walsh, a purple belt in his early 30s, was quieter but just as cruel. He would partner with Lisa during drills and deliberately use more force than necessary, claiming he was helping her get used to real pressure. When Lisa would gasp or struggle to breathe, Kevin would tell her that she needed to toughen up if she wanted to continue training. The newer students were the worst because they were desperate to fit in with the advanced students. Marcus Bell had started training just 1 month before Lisa, but he was young and athletic and picked up techniques quickly. He began copying Jake's behavior, making jokes about Lisa's performance and rolling his eyes when she asked questions. "I don't understand why she keeps coming," Marcus whispered to another white belt during a water break. "She's holding everyone back. We could be learning advanced stuff instead of watching Carlos explain the same basic move to her for the 10th time." Lisa heard every word. She pretended to drink from her water bottle while tears threatened to fill her eyes. She wanted to walk out and never come back, but something stubborn inside her refused to quit. Every insult made her more determined to prove them wrong, even though she had no idea how. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in her 4th month of training. Carlos had paired Lisa with Jake for a demonstration in front of the entire class. Jake was supposed to show a submission technique called a rear naked choke, and Lisa was supposed to be his practice partner. "Don't worry," Jake said loudly as they walked to the center of the mat. "I'll go easy on you. We don't want anyone getting hurt." The class laughed, and Lisa felt her stomach twist with anxiety. Jake positioned himself behind Lisa and wrapped his arm around her neck. The technique was supposed to be done slowly and carefully during demonstrations, giving the partner time to tap out before any real pressure was applied. But Jake had other plans. "The key to this choke," Jake explained to the class while tightening his grip around Lisa's throat, "is to cut off the blood flow to the brain. You have to apply steady pressure like this." He squeezed much harder than necessary, and Lisa immediately felt dizzy and panicked. Lisa tapped Jake's arm frantically, which was the signal to let go, but Jake held on for several more seconds while continuing his explanation. "See how quickly this works? Most people tap out in just a few seconds because they can't handle the pressure." When Jake finally released her, Lisa gasped for air and stumbled forward. Her vision was blurry, and she felt sick to her stomach. The class watched in silence as she tried to catch her breath and compose herself. "Good job being tough," Jake said with a fake smile. "That's what real training feels like." Several students nodded approvingly as if Lisa had just passed some kind of test. But Lisa knew what had happened. Jake had used the demonstration as an excuse to hurt and humiliate her in front of everyone. She had been choked much longer and harder than necessary, and everyone in the room knew it. Carlos looked uncomfortable but said nothing, perhaps afraid to challenge his star student. After class, Lisa went to the bathroom and cried quietly in one of the stalls. Her neck was sore, and she had red marks where Jake's arm had pressed against her skin. She felt foolish for thinking she could belong in this world of tough, experienced fighters. As she gathered her things to leave, Lisa overheard Jake talking to a group of his friends in the locker room area. She was walking past when she heard her name mentioned, so she stopped to listen from around the corner. "I don't know why Carlos lets her keep coming," Jake was saying. "She's wasting everyone's time. Some people just aren't cut out for this, you know? It's embarrassing to watch." Marcus Bell laughed and added, "Watching her try to grapple is like watching a turtle try to dance. It's painful for everyone involved. Maybe if we make it uncomfortable enough, she'll quit on her own," Tony Garcia suggested. "Then we can get back to serious training instead of babysitting beginners who don't belong here." "The problem is she keeps coming back," Kevin Walsh said. "Most people would have gotten the hint by now and found a different hobby, but she's too stubborn or too stupid to realize she doesn't fit in." Lisa stood frozen behind the wall, listening to every cruel word. These men were discussing her like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person trying to learn. They were actively planning to make her life miserable until she quit. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with each person adding their own insults and suggestions for getting rid of her. Lisa heard them laugh about her technique, her appearance, and her determination. They made jokes about her divorce and called her desperate for attention. When she finally made it to her car, Lisa sat in the parking lot and sobbed. Every muscle in her body hurt from training, but the emotional pain was much worse. She felt completely alone and defeated. These people did not just dislike her. They hated having her around and wanted her gone. For the first time since starting jiu-jitsu, Lisa seriously considered quitting. It would be so easy to never come back and return to her quiet, safe life. She could find a different hobby, maybe something where people would not judge her so harshly. But as she sat there crying, Lisa remembered why she had started training in the first place. She had been tired of feeling weak and helpless after her divorce. She had wanted to prove to herself that she could do something difficult and scary. Lisa wiped her tears and made a decision. She would not let Jake Morrison and his friends win. Somehow, some way, she would find a way to get better and prove them all wrong. She did not know how yet, but she refused to let them destroy her dream. Lisa drove home from Iron Wolf Academy that night feeling broken and angry. The cruel words from Jake and his friends kept playing in her mind like a broken record. She wanted to prove them wrong, but she had no idea how. At her current pace of learning, it would take years before she could even compete with the average students, let alone someone like Jake. The next morning, Lisa called in sick to work. She could not face pretending everything was normal when her whole world felt upside down. She sat at her kitchen table drinking coffee and staring at her phone. Without really thinking about it, she scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she had not called in over a year. Danny Torres had been her ex-husband's best friend in the Marines. Danny was different from David, though. Where David was loud and always trying to impress people, Danny was quiet and thoughtful. He had served 3 tours overseas and had seen things that changed him. After leaving the military, Danny opened a small self-defense school on the other side of town. Lisa had always liked Danny, but after the divorce, she assumed he would take David's side like most of their mutual friends had. She hesitated for 10 minutes before finally pressing the call button. "Lisa?" Danny's voice sounded surprised but not unfriendly. "How are you doing?" "Not so good," Lisa admitted. She found herself telling Danny everything about the jiu-jitsu classes, the bullying, and how lost she felt. Danny listened without interrupting, making small sounds that showed he was paying attention. "You know," Danny said when she finished, "what those guys are doing to you is wrong, but I might be able to help you with the technical side of things. I teach combat grappling here at my school. It's different from sport jiu-jitsu, but the basics are the same." Danny explained that military combatives focused on ending fights quickly rather than scoring points in competitions. The techniques were designed for soldiers who might be smaller or weaker than their opponents, but needed to survive dangerous situations. "The thing about bullies," Danny said, "is that they pick on people they think can't fight back. Maybe it's time to change their minds about what you can do." Lisa felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. She agreed to meet Danny at his school the next evening after her regular jiu-jitsu class. She did not tell anyone at Iron Wolf Academy about her plan. Danny's school was nothing like Iron Wolf Academy. It was smaller and quieter, located in a strip mall between a grocery store and a dry cleaner. The mats were older and the equipment was basic, but the atmosphere felt completely different. There were no egos or attitude, just serious people, learning practical skills. Danny was 42 years old and built like a tree trunk. His arms were covered in scars from his military service, and his eyes had the careful look of someone who had seen real violence. But when he taught, he was patient and encouraging in a way that Carlos never was. "Forget everything you think you know about fighting," Danny told Lisa during their first private lesson. "Size and strength matter, but technique and timing matter more. In the military, we had female soldiers who could take down men twice their size because they knew how to use leverage and surprise." Danny taught Lisa techniques that were illegal in sport jiu-jitsu, but perfectly effective for self-defense. He showed her how to use her smaller size as an advantage, slipping into positions that bigger opponents could not defend against. He taught her chokes and joint locks that worked so quickly that her opponent would not have time to use their strength against her. But the most important thing Danny taught Lisa was mental toughness. He had her practice techniques while he yelled at her and tried to distract her, preparing her for the stress of real confrontation. He taught her breathing exercises to stay calm under pressure and visualization techniques to plan her moves in advance. "Fighting is 90% mental," Danny explained. "The person who stays calm and thinks clearly will beat the person who panics and relies on strength every time." After 2 weeks of training with Danny, Lisa felt like she was learning a completely different martial art. His techniques were simpler but more effective than what she learned at Iron Wolf Academy. More importantly, Danny believed in her ability to improve, which gave her confidence she had never felt before. But Danny was not Lisa's only secret weapon. One evening, while practicing at Danny's school, Lisa met Maria Santos. Maria was 35 years old and had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 15 years. She was a black belt who competed at the highest levels but kept a low profile in the local scene. Maria was at Danny's school to cross-train and improve her self-defense skills. She watched Lisa rolling with one of Danny's students and was impressed by the unusual techniques Lisa was using. After class, Maria introduced herself and asked where Lisa had learned to move like that. "I've never seen anyone combine military combatives with traditional jiu-jitsu like that," Maria said. "It's really creative. Where do you normally train?" Lisa told Maria about Iron Wolf Academy and the problems she was having there. Maria's face darkened as Lisa described Jake's behavior and the constant harassment from other students. "I know Jake Morrison," Maria said with disgust. "He's got a reputation for being a bully. He's technically skilled, but he uses his rank to intimidate people instead of helping them improve. That's not what martial arts should be about." Maria offered to give Lisa private lessons twice a week, focusing on competition-style jiu-jitsu that would complement what she was learning from Danny. Maria's teaching style was completely different from anyone Lisa had worked with before. She treated Lisa like an equal and pushed her to attempt techniques that seemed impossible. "You have natural flexibility and body awareness," Maria told Lisa after their first session together. "Most people your age are too stiff to do some of these moves, but you move like a dancer. We can use that." Maria taught Lisa advanced techniques that even purple and brown belts struggled with. She showed her unusual submissions and transitions that most people had never seen before. More importantly, Maria taught Lisa how to set up these techniques so they would work against bigger, stronger opponents. The combination of Danny's military training and Maria's competition experience gave Lisa a unique skill set that no one at Iron Wolf Academy would expect. She was learning techniques from two different fighting systems and blending them into something entirely new. Lisa also had advantages that none of her tormentors knew about. In high school and college, she had been a competitive gymnast. The years of training had given her exceptional body awareness and flexibility that most martial artists never developed. More importantly, gymnastics had taught her to push through fear and pain, skills that served her well in combat sports. The mental toughness Lisa had developed as a gymnast was different from what most fighters possessed. Gymnasts learned to perform complex movements under intense pressure while maintaining perfect control. They learned to fall safely and get back up immediately. Most importantly, they learned that success came from thousands of hours of repetition and constant refinement of technique. After 6 weeks of secret training with Danny and Maria, Lisa felt like a different person. Her body was stronger and more flexible than it had ever been. Her techniques were sharp and precise. Most importantly, her confidence was growing every day. At Iron Wolf Academy, Lisa continued to pretend she was the same struggling beginner that everyone expected her to be. She let Jake and his friends continue their harassment, while secretly planning for the day when she would shock them all. She practiced her new techniques carefully, making sure not to reveal her true skill level during regular training. The other students had no idea that the quiet woman they mocked every day was becoming a dangerous opponent. They saw what they expected to see: a weak, uncoordinated beginner who did not belong in their world. But Lisa knew the truth. She was no longer the helpless victim they thought she was. She was becoming a fighter, and soon everyone would know it. The announcement came on a cold Tuesday evening in November. Carlos Rodriguez stood at the front of the class holding a stack of papers and looking excited about something. Lisa sat quietly in the back row as usual, trying to stay invisible while the advanced students gathered around their instructor. "I have some great news, everyone," Carlos announced. "Iron Wolf Academy will be hosting our annual in-house tournament next month. This is a chance for all of you to test your skills against each other in a friendly competition environment." Jake Morrison's eyes lit up immediately. He loved any opportunity to show off his skills and dominate weaker opponents. The tournament would be divided by belt rank and weight class, which meant Jake would likely face other black belts or advanced brown belts. It was a chance for him to prove once again that he was the best fighter in the gym. "The tournament is open to all belt levels," Carlos continued. "White belts will compete against white belts, blue belts against blue belts, and so on. We'll also have some exhibition matches for fun and maybe some special challenges if anyone is interested." Lisa listened to the announcement with mixed feelings. Part of her was curious about competing, but she knew she was not ready to face even the weakest white belts in the gym. Her secret training with Danny and Maria had made her much better, but she still felt like a beginner compared to most students. After class, Jake was talking loudly with his usual group of followers. Tony Garcia, Kevin Walsh, and Marcus Bell gathered around him like he was holding court. They were discussing who they thought would win each division and making jokes about some of the weaker students. "I bet Tommy Chen quits before his first match," Tony said, referring to a quiet college student who had started training recently. "He can barely handle regular sparring. A real competition would probably make him cry." "What about Lisa?" "Marcus?" Bell asked with a cruel grin. "Think she'll enter the tournament? I'd love to see her get submitted in front of a crowd." Jake's face broke into a wide smile. Lisa was gathering her things nearby and could hear every word they were saying. She tried to move faster, hoping to escape before they noticed her, but it was too late. "Hey, Lisa," Jake called out loudly, making sure everyone in the gym could hear him. "You should totally enter the tournament. It would be so much fun to watch." Lisa felt her face turn red as every person in the gym turned to look at her. She clutched her bag tighter and tried to think of something to say that would end this conversation quickly. "I don't think I'm ready for competition yet," Lisa said quietly, hoping Jake would lose interest and move on to someone else. But Jake was just getting started. He had an audience now, and he loved being the center of attention. He walked closer to Lisa, making sure his voice carried to every corner of the gym. "Come on, don't be so modest," Jake said with fake encouragement. "You've been training for what, 6 months now? That's plenty of time to learn the basics. Besides, it's just a friendly competition between students." Several people were starting to gather around to watch the conversation. Lisa could see some of them trying not to smile, clearly enjoying her discomfort. She felt trapped and embarrassed, wishing she could disappear into the floor. "I really don't think it's a good idea," Lisa repeated, but her voice was even quieter now. She could feel her confidence shrinking under all the attention. That's when Jake decided to go for the kill. He had been planning this moment for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity to humiliate Lisa in front of the entire gym. The tournament announcement had given him exactly what he needed. "Tell you what," Jake said loudly, making sure everyone could hear his generous offer. "How about we do a special exhibition match? You and me, just for fun. I'll go easy on you, of course. Think of it as a learning experience." The suggestion hit the gym like a bomb. Conversations stopped as people processed what Jake had just proposed. A black belt challenging a white belt was already unusual, but Jake challenging Lisa was like a professional boxer offering to fight a child. Tony Garcia started laughing first, followed quickly by Kevin Walsh and Marcus Bell. Soon, most of the gym was chuckling at the absurd idea of Lisa facing Jake in any kind of competition. Even some of the newer students who usually stayed quiet were smiling at the ridiculous suggestion. "That's not really fair," Carlos said, trying to step in and protect Lisa from further embarrassment. "Exhibition matches should be between students of similar skill levels. Maybe Lisa could compete against other white belts instead." But Jake waved off the instructor's concern with a confident gesture. He was enjoying this too much to let anyone interfere with his fun. "It's totally fair," Jake insisted. "I'll use only basic techniques, nothing too advanced. Think of it as a demonstration of how much Lisa has learned. Plus, it'll be entertaining for everyone to watch." Lisa stood frozen in the middle of the gym with dozens of eyes staring at her. She felt like a deer caught in headlights, unable to move or speak. Every instinct told her to run away and never come back, but something deeper kept her feet planted on the mat. "What do you say, Lisa?" Jake pressed, sensing that she was close to breaking. "Are you brave enough to step up and show everyone what you've learned? Or are you going to quit before you even try?" The challenge hung in the air like a dare. Lisa could feel the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. Some people looked sorry for her. Others seemed excited about the potential spectacle. And a few appeared genuinely curious about what she would do. Lisa thought about all the hours she had spent training in secret with Danny and Maria. She thought about the techniques she had learned and the confidence she had built. Most importantly, she thought about how tired she was of being treated like a joke by Jake and his friends. "Okay," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake cupped his ear dramatically. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. Could you speak up? Lisa took a deep breath and looked directly at Jake for the first time in months. When she spoke again, her voice was clear and steady. I said, okay, I'll do the exhibition match with you. The gym erupted in surprised chatter. Jake's grin grew even wider as he realized his plan had worked perfectly. He had backed Lisa into a corner where she had no choice but to accept his challenge, or look like a coward in front of everyone. Excellent, Jake said, clapping his hands together. This is going to be so much fun. Don't worry, Lisa, I promise to go easy on you. We don't want anyone getting hurt. Carlos looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, but he could see that both parties had agreed to the match. He reluctantly added Lisa's name to the exhibition list for the tournament. Word about the upcoming match spread through the gym like wildfire. Within minutes, everyone was talking about it. Some people thought Jake was being cruel, but most seemed excited about the entertainment value of watching Lisa get dominated by a black belt. Over the next few days, news of the exhibition match spread beyond Iron Wolf Academy. Jake made sure to tell everyone he knew about the upcoming spectacle. He described it as a charity match where he would help a struggling student gain some experience. Tony Garcia started a betting pool on how quickly Jake would submit Lisa. The longest anyone gave her was 30 seconds before she would be forced to tap out. Most people bet on less than 15 seconds. Kevin Walsh suggested selling tickets to raise money for the gym. People would pay good money to see this, he joked. It's like watching a nature documentary where the lion plays with its prey. Marcus Bell created a social media event page and invited everyone he could think of. He wrote a description calling it the fight of the century and promising that it would be the most entertaining few seconds in martial arts history. Lisa heard all the jokes and saw all the preparations being made for her public humiliation. Every day at the gym became harder as more people learned about the upcoming match. Students she had never spoken to would point at her and whisper to their friends. But Lisa had a secret that none of them knew about. While they were making jokes and placing bets, she was training harder than ever with Danny and Maria. Her technique was improving rapidly, and her confidence was growing stronger every day. Danny had warned her that accepting Jake's challenge might be dangerous. He's going to try to hurt you, Danny said during one of their training sessions. Guys like that don't just want to win, they want to destroy people they see as weak. Maria had a different perspective. This could be your chance to shock everyone, she said. Jake's so confident that he won't be prepared for what you can actually do. Surprise is a powerful weapon in fighting. Lisa knew they were both right. The exhibition match would either be her greatest triumph or her most crushing defeat. There would be no middle ground. As the tournament date approached, Lisa felt a strange calm settling over her. She had spent months being afraid of Jake Morrison and his friends. She had endured their insults and harassment while feeling helpless to fight back. But now she had a chance to face her biggest tormentor in front of everyone who had ever doubted her. Win or lose, she would finally have the opportunity to show them who she really was. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything at Iron Wolf Academy. Jake Morrison thought he was about to deliver the final blow to a weak opponent who had annoyed him for too long. He had no idea that he was walking into a trap. The day of the Iron Wolf Academy tournament arrived with an energy that Lisa had never felt before. The gym was packed with people she had never seen, friends and family members of the regular students who had come to watch the competition. Word about the exhibition match between Jake and Lisa had spread throughout the local martial arts community, and many people had shown up just to witness what they expected to be a quick and entertaining mismatch. Lisa arrived at the gym 2 hours before her scheduled match. She sat quietly in the corner, watching the other competitions while trying to calm her nerves. The regular tournament brackets were proceeding normally, with students of similar skill levels facing each other in fair matches. Everyone seemed to be having fun and learning from their experiences. But Lisa knew that her match would be different. This was not about learning or fair competition. This was about Jake Morrison trying to humiliate her in front of the largest audience possible. She could hear people talking about the upcoming exhibition, making jokes about how quickly it would be over. Danny Torres had arrived early to support Lisa, though he tried to stay inconspicuous in the crowd. He caught her eye from across the room and gave her a small nod of encouragement. Maria Santos was there too, sitting near the back and watching everything with a serious expression. Jake Morrison was in his element, working the crowd like a professional entertainer. He wore his black belt with pride and moved through the gym shaking hands and accepting good wishes from his supporters. Lisa could hear him telling people that he planned to go easy on her and make it a learning experience rather than a real fight. "I'll probably just take her down gently and get a quick submission," Jake told a group of his friends. "No point in being too rough with someone who's basically still a beginner. This is more about showing people what high-level technique looks like." Tony Garcia was taking final bets on how long the match would last. Most people had put their money on less than 20 seconds. A few optimistic souls had bet on 30 seconds, but nobody thought Lisa would last longer than that. "The smart money is on 10 seconds or less," Tony announced loudly. Jake could probably submit her with his eyes closed. This is going to be like watching a masterclass in efficiency. Kevin Walsh was filming everything with his phone, planning to post the highlights on social media. He had already written captions about the most one-sided match in martial arts history and was excited to get footage of Lisa tapping out in record time. As the time for the exhibition match approached, Lisa felt a strange calm settling over her mind. This was the feeling Danny had taught her to cultivate, the mental state that would allow her to think clearly under pressure. Her heart was beating fast, but her thoughts were crystal clear. Carlos Rodriguez called Jake and Lisa to the center of the mat for final instructions. The crowd gathered around in a circle, creating an arena-like atmosphere. Lisa could see dozens of faces staring at her with expressions ranging from pity to anticipation. "This is just an exhibition match," Carlos announced to the crowd. "Both competitors have agreed to demonstrate technique and sportsmanship. Remember, this is about learning and fun, not about winning at all costs." Jake nodded seriously, as if he was taking the instructor's words to heart, but Lisa could see the predatory gleam in his eyes. He was planning to make this as humiliating as possible while still maintaining the pretense that he was being educational. "You ready for this, Lisa?" Jake asked with a condescending smile. "Don't worry if you tap out quickly. Everyone knows you're just here to learn." Lisa looked directly into Jake's eyes for the first time since accepting his challenge. "I'm ready," she said quietly. The referee positioned both fighters in the center of the mat and explained the rules. The match would continue until one person submitted or the referee stopped it for safety reasons. Jake would be allowed to use any legal technique, but he was expected to show restraint given the skill difference. Jake bounced on his toes and rolled his shoulders, loosening up like a professional athlete before a big performance. He winked at his friends in the crowd and cracked his knuckles dramatically. Lisa stood perfectly still, breathing slowly and visualizing the techniques Maria had taught her. "Fighters ready?" the referee asked. Both competitors nodded. "Begin." Jake immediately lunged forward with aggressive confidence, planning to grab Lisa and take her to the ground where his size and strength advantage would end the match quickly. He had done this same takedown thousands of times against training partners, and he expected Lisa to fold like paper under his assault. But Lisa was no longer the helpless beginner that Jake remembered. As soon as he moved forward, she stepped slightly to the side and used his momentum against him. It was a move that Danny had drilled with her hundreds of times, designed specifically for smaller fighters facing larger, more aggressive opponents. Jake found himself flying through the air in a perfect hip toss, his body rotating completely before crashing hard onto the mat. The sound of his impact echoed through the suddenly silent gymnasium. For a moment, nobody could process what had just happened. The quiet office worker had just thrown the gym's best fighter like he weighed nothing. But Lisa was not finished. Before Jake could even begin to recover from his surprise, she had moved into position behind him with fluid grace that came from her gymnastics background. Her movements were so fast and precise that most people in the crowd missed the transition. Jake tried to turn and face Lisa, but he found himself trapped in a position he had never experienced before. Lisa had applied a modified arm triangle choke that Maria had taught her, a technique that combined traditional jiu-jitsu with military combatives. It was a submission that most sport fighters had never seen and would not know how to defend against. The choke was perfectly applied, cutting off blood flow to Jake's brain with scientific precision. Lisa had positioned her body weight exactly where it needed to be, using leverage instead of strength to create unstoppable pressure. Jake's face began to turn red as he realized he was in serious trouble. Jake tried desperately to escape, using every technique he knew to break free from submission holds. He rolled and bucked and tried to use his strength advantage, but Lisa moved with him like water, maintaining perfect position no matter what he did. Her years of gymnastics training had given her a sense of balance and body control that Jake could not match. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their champion struggled helplessly against an opponent they had considered a joke just moments before. Jake's movements became more frantic as the choke tightened, his breathing becoming labored and his vision starting to blur. Lisa applied the submission with calm efficiency, remembering everything Danny and Maria had taught her about staying relaxed under pressure. She could feel Jake's panic growing as he realized he could not escape, and she knew the match would be over soon. At exactly 10 seconds into the fight, Jake Morrison was forced to tap out frantically against Lisa's arm. The sound of his palm slapping against her skin echoed through the silent gymnasium like a gunshot. Lisa immediately released the hold and helped a bewildered Jake to his feet, extending her hand in perfect sportsmanship. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Dozens of people stood frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The weak, mocked beginner had just defeated the gym's best fighter in 10 seconds, using a technique that none of them had ever seen before. Then the crowd erupted. Some people cheered in amazement. Others stood slack-jawed in disbelief. Several students who had bet against Lisa were counting money they would never see again. Carlos Rodriguez looked like he had just witnessed a miracle. Jake Morrison sat on the mat for several minutes, staring at nothing while trying to understand what had happened to him. His friends gathered around him, but nobody knew what to say. The invincible champion had been exposed as very human after all. Tony Garcia quietly deleted the social media posts he had prepared about Lisa's inevitable defeat. Kevin Walsh stopped filming and put his phone away without posting anything. Marcus Bell found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about fighting and strength. Lisa walked quietly to the edge of the mat where Danny and Maria were waiting with proud smiles. She had not just won a fight. She had proven that determination and smart training could overcome size and arrogance. Most importantly, she had shown everyone in the gym that they had seriously underestimated the quiet woman they had mocked for months. From that day forward, Lisa Martinez became a respected member of the Iron Wolf Academy. Jake Morrison was never quite the same, having learned a hard lesson about humility and respect. Lisa eventually earned her own black belt and became an instructor, specializing in teaching students who faced similar challenges. She never forgot the lessons learned during those difficult early months, and she made sure that no student at her gym would ever face the kind of harassment she had endured. The quiet office worker had become a champion, not just of martial arts, but of standing up for people who needed someone to believe in them. The 10 seconds that changed everything had taught everyone an important lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one nobody takes seriously.